Hey soccer fans, Nick here with the Feed the Fire podcast, where we are talking the Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. We have a lot to talk about in this episode. We're going to touch on the latest playoff drama in the MLS Cup playoffs. We're going to look at the Chicago Fire's 2026 schedule, which unfortunately wasn't released with much fanfare from a league perspective, but man, did the Fire knock their announcement out of the park. And also, we have some transfer news from the Chicago Fire about a new center back who is nearly finalizing his negotiations. So we're going to get into all of this and more during this episode. But first, I gotta say, it was great to see so many people turn out at the Chicago Fire locker room sale this weekend at the Fire Pitch. For those of you who don't know, at the end of every season, the Chicago Fire will essentially just have a garage sale and dump all their old equipment, gear, things of that nature that they're looking to push. All the old giveaways from throughout the season. Like they had the cheerleading pom-poms, they had the cowboy hats, they had all the posters for each match available for sale. There was a bin of nothing but scarves. 10 for $10. Great deal. I, of course, grabbed 9 Greek Night scarves to hand out to all my family for Christmas, and then 1 Purdue Chicago Fire to give to my friend who's a professor at that fine institution down there in West Lafayette. So I think I made out great. I've got a cool little pullover warm-up top here, number 33, who most recently was Victor Bezerra's number. So glad to kind of have that little association with a local striker, homegrown kind of guy, if I recall. I was able to pick up a pair of training shorts with Barroso's number 2 on it. Then again, if they were getting rid of some old stuff, maybe it was Arnaud Suquet's number 2. Who knows? Grabbed a new soccer ball, grabbed a new Chicago Fire flag. I actually found an old New England Revolution jersey. It was an authentic 2017 New England Revolution jersey. So when I saw it with their old logo on, I'm like, yeah, I got to grab this. I can't let this just sit around in a bin. So there's some cool stuff. Got some pullovers for the kids. It was a fun time. It was great to see so many Fire fans come together. Really enjoyed it. It was fun. And the one thing I will say, if you go next year, if you have the opportunity to do this, and season ticket holders are allowed in, this year we were allowed in 2 hours early. Last year I think we were only allowed in 1 hour early. If you do go next year, whether season ticket holder or general public, bring a shopping bag. Bring like a big canvas Aldi bag or something, because they don't have any bins or bags, and that way you're going to want to carry around your stuff. The other thing, if you go, really consider the $50 mystery envelopes. They were all autographed gear giveaways, or at least the ones that I saw online were autographed gear. So for $50, you ended up with either a Xherdan Shaqiri signed jersey, a team signed jersey, Brian Gutierrez signed ball. These were just a few things people were getting in their $50 mystery box, mystery envelope giveaways. So something to remember for next year. And if anyone from the Fire organization is listening for next year, I know it's difficult, but got to find a way to speed up that checkout process. I think I ended up shopping for about 30 minutes and picked out my stuff, and then I waited in line little over an hour just to pay. So if there's any way to speed that up and figure it out, I say go for it. Okay, getting back to our Major League Soccer talk here. Real quick, you can go back and watch the highlights, go back and watch the replays on Apple TV and MLS Season Pass. But there was a massive Western Conference playoff game yesterday where Vancouver hosted LAFC. Vancouver goes up 2-0 at the end of the first half. Sabi scores in the 39th. Laborda scores in first half stoppage time, and you think, wow, how's LAFC going to come back on this one? Well, we know how. This is why they signed their big-name player. This is why they signed Son. He has a brace, a goal in the 60th, and a free kick stunner in 90+5 to draw level and send the game to PKs. And then it's Vancouver winning it 4-3 in the shootout. It was an absolutely wild night. The Vancouver guys in my MLS content creators chat, I've been getting messages from them all night. They're like, we can't sleep. This is wild. The stadium was rocking. This was a great look for Vancouver and for just as a whole for MLS. So wild, wild night. Vancouver advances in the MLS Cup playoffs. Okay, turning to the heart of our Chicago Fire content here. This past week, November 20th, the 2026 playoff regular season schedule was announced. Every team had put out their own variations on the announcements. And before I get into the actual schedule and the teams the Fire will face, gotta recognize a fantastic video announcement by the Chicago Fire. And when they focus on putting out great content and not just like focus on we need to release the schedule, that's when great things happen. And that's what the Fire did. So to kind of recap it, you got to go back to the 80s when the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off was released with Matthew Broderick. Phenomenal movie. Not only was it funny, not only was it an iconic 80s comedy, but it also featured in the city of Chicago, and you got to see a lot of Chicago landmarks. Fast forward to 2017, I believe, the Chicago Fire do a parody of that entitled Mike McGee's Day Off. And just like Ferris Bueller tried to get out of going to school, Mike McGee gets out of going to training. And again, they do a lot of recreation and spoofing of those Ferris Bueller scenes with Mike McGee and players and staff and everyone from around MLS, which is great. Thierry Henry makes an appearance. Bruce Arena makes an appearance. It's Omar Gonzalez makes an appearance in it. Now fast forward to this week, they reshoot their spoof of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, again with Mike McGee, and instead of trying to get out of training, he's trying to get out of going to the release party. You've got appearances by all the current maybe not all, but a lot of the current Fire players. They really do embrace a lot of the memes and goofy stuff that's been going on in fan culture for the last year or two. They do their team meeting about the schedule release, and you see people dressed up as 6'7". You see the mascots from around Chicago, the Chicago Sky mascot, JoJo, the Julasco mascot. You've got Andrew Gutman dressed up as a banana, and Jonathan Dean wearing his crown, King Dean. So they've really embraced a lot of the kind of fan jokes and meme culture around the club with this video. You have Joe Chat's, Tim Hotza making an appearance, and from what I've read, this is Joe Chat's premiere acting debut here, and he's got a little way to go to get to an Oscar, but there may be an Emmy in his future. Maybe an Emmy in his future, I'll say that. If not a Pulitzer, right, Joe? You're a writer. And it was so much fun. Even Omar Gonzalez replays his original role in the spoof, but what's great, instead of wearing his Gretzky jersey, which an homage in the Ferris Bueller movie, he is now wearing a Connor Bedard jersey. It's fantastic. So a lot of fun stuff. And then, like I said, the focus was on making a fun video and something cool for the fans. And the end credits for the movie, that's where they roll out the schedule. Instead of actual end credits, it's the schedule with all the home and away games listed out. So it was in there. The schedule release was in there, but it was more about making something fun and doing something very cool with the club, the fans, and for the city of Chicago. So I really loved it. Now, looking specifically at the schedule, there are a few things to note, and we've got some notes here that the team released as well. Chicago opens its 29th season on the road against Houston Dynamo on Saturday, February 21st. This is the earliest opener in club history, one calendar day earlier than the February 22nd opener at Columbus last season in 2025. The Fire will also open the home portion of their 2026 season against CF Montreal on February 28th at Soldier Field, the earliest home opener in club history by one day. Last year, 2025, was March 1st. This is the first time the Fire play Montreal in a home opener, and their only meeting in an opener of any kind was when the Fire went up to Montreal to open the season in March 17th, 2012. Additionally, this will be the first time the Chicago Fire ever face Houston for a season opener. 3 or 4 matches in April will be played at Soldier Field, part of a busy home stretch, the club calls it, on the lakefront, with 5 of 6 games through May played at home. All but one will be against the Eastern Conference opponents. So that is a crucial part of the schedule that the club, in their press conference, just providing you some notes and feedback, have already identified as a very, very important stretch of matches. 5 of 6 games in May will be at home. Very important stretch there. Chicago also welcomes Sporting Kansas City to Soldier Field for the first time since 2022 on April 25th. They have 97 regular season matches, including MLS Cup 2000. And Kansas City has played 11 times at Soldier Field, registering a forgettable mark of 1-8-2 on the lakefront. So well said there by the Chicago Fire press release team. The Chicago Fire don't see a midweek game until they travel to DC United on May 13th. They have 7 matches on Wednesdays or Thursdays, including 4 at home, and all of those midweek matches will be against current playoff teams. Vancouver on July 16th, Miami September 9th, Philly October 14th, and Orlando on October 28th. Now, for me, typically, I've been rolling over my season tickets from those weeknight games to weekend games, where I do have a little bit more time to enjoy it, rather than trying to squeeze in everything in a work day and then duck out or go home, grab the kids, get back into the city. So we'll have to see when those games are. I believe that Whitecaps game on the 16th is actually an earlier kickoff. The Chicago Fire for Cyber Week have been marketing a few 3-game packages, one being against Vancouver with a home opener against Montreal and the Miami game, another 3-game package. I forget the 3 teams, but they're all like early kickoff games, and the idea was to market towards families who can bring their kids, who can bring extended families and get into the city maybe at an earlier time without as much traffic, because we all know in the Chicago area there's always traffic. It's just a matter of how much. So I think that Vancouver game is going to be an earlier kickoff. We'll take a look at the schedule when we get to it. Let's see what other stuff. Oh, here, the Fire have their longest road trip of the season in August, playing 4 in a row away from Chicago starting on the 19th against Orlando. So Orlando, August 19th, New York Red Bulls, August 22nd, Seattle Sounders, August 29th, then TFC, Toronto, September 5th. So you've got Florida, New York, Washington, cross country. So you got to travel the height of the country, then the length of the country, and then back across to Toronto. That's going to be rough. That is going to be a rough stretches. That will, I'm looking for draws. I'm just looking for any sort of points in those matches if the Fire have to be doing that. And I would imagine a heavily rotated squad in Seattle. Non-conference opponent. If you drop points to Seattle in Seattle, I don't think it's going to be a deciding factor in your season. Then the final note here, Chicago will play 2 primetime matches as part of a Sunday night soccer matchups. The Fire will host Portland Timbers on Sunday the 16th, the first time since 2018 that Portland visits Chicago. And their other Sunday night soccer match will be on September 13th, hosting the New England Revolution. So those are kind of the key notes. Now looking at the schedule, like we said, the Fire have got 2 games in February. Season opener at Houston, home opener against Montreal. Let's take a look real quick and find some of their Western Conference opponents. I get the feeling, and maybe it's just anecdotal evidence, or maybe it's actual evidence, the Chicago Fire have played pretty well against Western Conference opponents over the last several seasons. So hopefully they can continue that trend and get the season started on a right note, beat Houston down in Houston, and then come home and beat Montreal and start with a nice 6-point back-to-back victory there. Again, they are hosting Kansas City on April 25th, a Kansas City team that got to keep an eye on them in the offseason. They're going to be making a lot of moves, I believe. Also looking at Western Conference opponents, they host Vancouver on July 16th. Oh, that's a Thursday evening. That is a 7:30 p.m. game. So forget what I said about an earlier kickoff on that Vancouver game. They travel to Seattle on August 29th. And then, as far as other Western Conference games, Colorado on October 31st. So a nice little trick-or-treat game at the Rapids there. But I think that's about it. Just those 4 non-conference games that I can see on this year's schedule. Now, the season opens up with what looks to be kind of an up and down schedule in terms of the quality of teams they're playing against, at least in terms of 2025 results. So after those February openers, March 7th at Columbus, March 14th versus DC United, March 21st at Philadelphia. So 2 very, very good opponents on the road early on in the season for the Fire. So hopefully they can win their home games. And then in April, they're home to Nashville, Atlanta, Kansas City, and away to Cincinnati. So what's interesting is they really have kind of a balanced schedule, again, in terms of where teams finish this season. Last season, it was nice that the Fire really could have taken advantage of what turned out to be an easier, quote-unquote, end of the season schedule, but unfortunately dropping points to New England and Toronto, drawing instead of winning, kept them into that play-in game instead of getting into that 7 or 6 seed spot in the playoffs. This doesn't look to be that this season, because they'll end the season with 6 matches in October and 1 in November. So these October matches, you've got home games against New York and Philly, away games to the Revs and Atlanta, back home against Orlando, away to Colorado, and then you finish the season on November 7th. A home match, thankfully you finish at home, but it's against Columbus. Columbus, who has been very, very good recently. Now, there have been rumors that Celtic over in Scotland has been trying to talk to Wilfried Nancy and bring him over as their next coach. Some outlets in Europe have said that Columbus has given permission. Some outlets in Europe have said that they've actually spoken, but there has been absolutely nothing from the States or from MLS or from Columbus to corroborate any of that reporting. And I do that in air quotes because European sports journalism sometimes can be questionable, oftentimes can be questionable, when it comes to transfer rumors and coaching rumors and things like that. So, again, getting back to the schedule, it looks like the Fire have kind of a balanced, decent opening first 9 weeks or so, first third of the season, and then at the end of the schedule, again, similar kind of balance. We'll see how Atlanta improves. We'll see how the Revs improve. We'll see if Colorado improves. And what's going on with Orlando City, if they can kind of stabilize themselves and get back to playoff contention, potentially being a top 5 or 6 team in the East, or if they're going to continue the free fall that happened at the end of this season. Center of the schedule, May, June. Oh, I'm sorry, they are off in June, May, July, and August. I imagine June will be the League's Cup break. May, they are home to Cincinnati and Red Bulls, away to DC and Montreal, then home against Toronto. In July, they are home against Vancouver, and then away to Miami and New York. So again, got a nice little 3-game stretch where you hit all the Canadian teams there. Hopefully they can replicate what they did last season and win all those matches. But that's going to be a tough stretch. Kansas City always plays tough. So coming off the back of April, you've got a tough Kansas City match at home. And then you've got Cincy and Red Bulls at home. Again, couple of tough games. Going on the road, if DC can't get their act together, hopefully that is a relatively easy game. And I say that, there really are no easy games, right? These are professionals in a professional league. They're playing for their livelihoods, if anything. There are no easy games. You have to go out and execute week in and week out. And the only time the reason I use the phrase easy games is because DC hasn't been good recently. And you would expect the Fire, if they play their game and play to their level, to win that game. So that's what I mean by easy games. I'm not trying to insult any opposition teams. I'm not trying to say any players are below a certain quality, but that's what I mean by easy games. We look into August. They host Charlotte and Portland, and then travel away to Orlando, Red Bulls, and Seattle. September, they continue their road trip at Toronto and then come back home to face Miami on September 9th, the Revs, and then travel away to Nashville and Charlotte before they get into that end of season stretch. So that's the schedule at a glance. Again, the games I'm looking forward to, absolutely the season opener, the home opener. I even talked to one fan at the Chicago Fire locker room sale who said, "Yeah, I think I might go down to Houston. I've already booked a plane ticket. I don't know if I'll exchange it, but I booked my plane ticket to Houston, and I want to get down there for the season opener." I was like, "Very cool. Enjoy it if you go." So, Fire fans, I know there's at least one of you going down to Houston. Let's see if we can get some supporters down there to greet the team at their season opener. So, looking forward to those. I'm looking forward to the Chicago Fire playing against the top teams from the 2025 season. So the Philadelphia matches are key for me. The Cincinnati matches are key for me to measure where the Fire have come as a club. A few years back, they were wooden spoon contenders. Last season, we saw a shift in the locker room. And by that last season I mean 2024. 2025, complete change with Berhalter coming in, bringing in his own players, changing the style, changing the culture. So, and we saw the improvement. They made the playoffs, and we can say that they won their playoff game. They made the playoffs. This isn't an asterisk wild card appearance. They made the playoffs. So now I want to start to see the Chicago Fire measure themselves against the better teams in the Eastern Conference. Are they going to be trophy contenders this year, or are they just going to be a better team than they were last year in MLS? So having those away games to Columbus and Philly in March, and these and an April away game to Cincinnati is going to be very, very indicative of how the Fire are going to play the season, I think. And then on the flip side, when do you get those teams at home? Cincinnati, unfortunately, you play them 3 weeks later at home in May, but that Philly game at home is in October, and that Columbus game to end the season. Now, the Miami games, that's a bit of a toss-up because we never know who's going to be playing at any point in time for those, but they are at Miami on July 22nd and hosting Miami on Wednesday, September 9th. So there's your Wednesday night game against Miami, and I just wonder how that's going to work out for the fans. I don't know if I want to go to Chicago to Soldier Field on a Wednesday night and just have that wreck my Thursday and Friday and then just have to use the weekend to recover. But that's just because I'm an old man. You guys might have different opinions on it. But anyway, that's the Chicago Fire schedule. I do like our Western Conference opponents. Also to touch on those, I think Houston will be a good measuring stick. They've had some struggles. They've improved. I think that's a good measuring stick. Of course, Vancouver coming off of the season they're having right now. It'll be great to see Thomas Mueller at home. And then Portland and Kansas City and Seattle. 3 teams who I think if they're playing well, it's a strong Western Conference. So I think those are great matchups for the Chicago Fire in a sense of facing non-conference opponents. So that's the schedule. Let me know what you think. Do you like all the weeknight games? Again, let's look real quick here. Our first weeknight game comes Wednesday, May 13th at DC United. Then Thursday, July 16th at home versus Vancouver. Wednesday, August 19th at Orlando. Wednesday, September 9th versus Miami, and then Wednesday, October 14th versus Philadelphia. I feel like they've had weeknight games against Philadelphia now 3 seasons in a row, 24, 25, and 26. I really do feel that. Anyway, let's turn our attention now to some transfer news before we wrap things up here. I first saw this from Tom Bogert, who tweeted this out on November 22nd, that according to sources, Chicago Fire are closing in on a deal to sign South African centerback Mbekezeli Mbokazi from Orlando Pirates. And it was first reported by Mark Gleason. Mbokazi, who's 20, already has 5 appearances for the senior South African national team. Now, going over to Mark Gleason's Twitter account, he says that Orlando Pirates Mbekezeli Mbokazi is in the U.S. this weekend to sign for the Chicago Fire. If terms are agreed, there will be a $3 million U.S. dollar transfer fee. So that is very interesting. First of all, let's talk about this. South African center back. The Fire need center back help, no doubt about it. They need defensive help. Omar Gonzalez, from what a lot of just anecdotal evidence is that he's going to be kind of transitioning into a coaching role and not playing. We have Joel Waterman, who's going to be locked in. We have Chris Cups, who, even though he's young, has MLS minutes under him. Is he going to become a regular for the Fire this season, or does he still need some growth at CF2 and then maybe work him into a few games for the senior team? Then we have Captain Jack Elliott, who is out of contract and getting up there in age and miles and minutes. So we'll see what the Fire want to do with him. He definitely proved last season his value to the club and that he can still play at the MLS level. No doubt about that. Scoring that banger of a goal against Philadelphia in the playoffs. But is that a player who is looking for a longer term deal? Does he want, a 3-4 year deal, and the Fire are only willing to offer him one, maybe with an option? We'll see how those negotiations go. I haven't heard anything thus far, but they do need center back depth, so this is great. And by all indications, this deal is going to happen. It just hasn't They just haven't actually put pen to paper yet. But let's take a look at Mbekezeli Mbokazi. I'm just going to leave the M off of it because his name is spelled with an MB at the front. And while I'm used to it with the Greek, it's more of a V, more of our soft B. So I'll just do that with this. Mbekezeli Mbokazi. So he was born September 19th, 2005, so 20 years old. If the Fire can get this guy and get him to start peaking and continuing to develop here, he could be a long-term piece for the Fire, or could be a phenomenal transfer to a top league and bring in a huge transfer fee. So I think that's the way the Fire are probably going to look to play it, just because he has such a high upside. But again, if a player peaks at Major League Soccer level and becomes a star in Major League Soccer, then still for a $3 million transfer fee, that's a pretty good signing. I'm assuming they're going to have to give him another deal at some point in the next 3-4 years, but that's where we're at right now. So his youth career was at the Langalabalele Academy, not familiar with that, and also Orlando Pirates in South Africa. He made his pro debut in 2025, just this year, with the Orlando Pirates. So he's had one season of professional soccer under his belt thus far, but 5 appearances for the South African under-20s, including a goal, and already 3 appearances for the South African national team. And these numbers are according to Wikipedia. He was made vice captain of the 2025-2026 season currently for the Orlando Pirates. So this guy is an extremely promising player for South Africa and for his club, and it's phenomenal that the Chicago Fire just continue to find these gems in and around the world, in all corners of the world here. We're bringing in a veteran midfielder from Sweden. We're bringing in a high upside center back from South Africa. This is an absolutely great Chicago Fire scouting department right here. So to provide some more detail on the player, the website supersport.com gives us a little more information. They say that Orlando Pirates defender, and by the way, yes, Orlando is a township in South Africa. So Orlando Pirates defender Mbekezeli Mbokazi is in the U.S. this weekend discussing a possible move to Chicago Fire. Officials have confirmed the 20-year-old center back is set to make a $3 million transfer fee to MLS if he agrees to terms and signs. What else is relevant for us in this here? Here we go. Here's a little bit of a scouting report. A departure from Pirates for Mbokazi has been in the cards for several months now after his explosive entry to the professional ranks. He only made his debut for Buccaneers, Orlando's nickname there, in March amid an injury crisis among the defenders, but took to the professional ranks like he's been playing for years, and in the matter of some 10 matches had won a first call-up to the South African squad, debuting as a 19-year-old in a friendly against Mozambique in June. This season he was appointed as the Pirates captain, or as Wikipedia said, vice captain, and helped them win their MTN 8 title over Stellenbosch in September. Let's see. Mbokazi, who hails from Huluwe in northern KwaZulu-Natal, would continue a long association between South African football and U.S. soccer, starting with Kaiser Motaung's move to the old NASL in the 60s. Okay, so even those in South Africa still have a sense of connection with the United States soccer. That's great. There are 2 South African players in MLS at present, Bongokale Longwane at Minnesota United, and Olwethu Makanye at Philadelphia Union. So, as great as the Chicago Fire's recruiting and talent search is, there's already a record of some decent talent in South Africa in MLS right now. Also, we get some writing from Joe Chats over at OnTap Sportsnet. Make sure you go follow Joe, not just for his acting chops, but for his coverage of the Chicago Fire and just his just award-winning personality. But Joe gives us a little bit more context in his article on OnTap Sportsnet. South African defender Mbekezeli Mbokazi is in the U.S. as the Fire in the final steps of agreeing to a deal with Pirates for around $3 million. Sources have confirmed to OnTap Sportsnet. The deal was not completed by Friday, November 22nd, but both sides are confident a transfer can be negotiated. He would be, and here's where Joe kind of gets in a little bit of the scouting and potential for this player, because he would be a high upside signing for the Fire entering 2026 as he's preparing for the World Cup. South African national team head coach Hugo Broos told reporters in October that Mbokazi should leave the South African Premiership this winter in order to take his career to the next level, which appears the center back is doing. Looking further down the article, Joe says now about the Fire that they need another left-footed defender in their ranks as the departures of Chase Gasper and Omar Gonzalez appear imminent, and Mbokazi would fit the role while providing long-term upside as someone who has eyes on playing in Europe in the future. Patience would be required as Mbokazi would be making the move to a league whose style is different from what he's dealt with in South Africa. Having said that, he's the type of young signing the Fire have wanted since Director of Football and head coach Greg Berhalter has joined. Talented, wants to prove they're worthy in a big league. So, for example, Victor Radojevic, Leo Barroso, and Jay Davila were the 2025 additions with a profile that Mbokazi appears to have and be the first one of those type of signings in 2026. So thank you, Joe, for giving us all that great information. I want to just throw in a couple other notes about Mbokazi here. I'm trying to find his physical stats, but I haven't been able to find him yet. But he looks like a very tall, broad-shouldered, physical type of player, solid kind of player. Now I went over to FBref to get some player comparisons. So what Mbokazi has been doing in 10 games this 2025-2026 season in the South Africa Premiership, according to FBref.com and their algorithms, Mbokazi is doing in South Africa what William Saliba is doing for Arsenal, Virgil van Dijk is doing for Liverpool, Jurrien Timber is doing for Arsenal, Gabriel Magalhaes is doing for Arsenal, and Mark Guhai, excuse me there, Mark, for that one, is doing for Crystal Palace. So again, what he's doing in South Africa is equivalent to what the best players in the Premiership, the best defenders in the Premiership are doing. So a lot of potential there, a lot of upside. I'm not saying he's a Premier League center back right now. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that he is having very comparable statistical seasons to some of the best players in the Premiership. So can Mbokazi do it in MLS? Clearly the Chicago Fire think so, and clearly they think he can do it at an extremely high level and project himself to one of the top leagues sometime in the future. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in, for listening, for joining me each and every week here on the Feed the Fire podcast. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, share the show. We're on YouTube. We're on social media at Glasshouse Soccer across all platforms. You can email me if you want to continue the conversation offline here, glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com. Thank you all for tuning in. Always great to talk Fire and MLS with you all. Let's go Fire.